I'm Ryan Polakaitis with REI Unite, and I'm here with Shomail Malik of Strategic Realty Solutions and Flip Nation. Shomail is an experienced rehabber who currently has 19 rehabs going on, and he's done plenty of deals in the past. Thanks for being on, Shomail.
Ryan, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
All right, so before we dive right in, Shomail, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about how you got into real estate investing?
Well, that's an interesting story because, I always joke that I was conceived to be a doctor. Most Pakistanis and Indians, that's kind of the route that you got to go. Either you're a doctor or an engineer, right? So that's when I kind of went into college studying. And interestingly enough, I got into multi-level marketing of all things. And that took me into a different path where one of my downlines was in real estate. His father was the master franchisor for Keller Williams. So while I was still in college, I started out as an agent. That was my first flavor of real estate back then. And as I was coming out of college, I had the option of continuing to be an agent and basically getting a check 1 month and maybe the next month I'm starving, or go into the corporate world. So I actually went into selling drugs, with legal
Right.
FDA approved drugs, pharmaceutical sales. And I did that for about 11 years in different capacities. So I climbed up the ladder pretty quickly. And by the time I was about 30 years old, I was a global business manager for a $35 million business unit for a Fortune 500 healthcare sales company. But in 2008, what happened was, I was kind of always wanted to have a side hustle, right? A lot of people, I think, in corporate are they feel like they've been lied to or embellished that that's the way out.
Sure.
And a lot of millennials, I think, feel that.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always looking for something. There was
Yeah.
no way that I was going to do that for 45 years. It's impossible.
Right.
So yeah, it was about that freedom and financial independence and all that good stuff that you read about and hear about and watch the 2 a.m. infomercials. And so, my brother had done a flip at that time. He was like 23 years old, and he made about 120 grand.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't work, I think, the rest of the year. He did that one flip, and that was it. And I'm like, it takes me an entire year
Right.
to even not even make that much, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I started looking back at real estate again. It was getting reintroduced to real estate, but from a different side, from real estate investing. And started taking some courses around 2008, and that's when I really got into the business. And I think the critical point was when Lehman Brothers crashed.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, and I think a lot of our minds, the single most critical point that set off the domino effect for all these banks defaulting. And so what I got into early in my career was flipping short sales. So doing the short sales, and you buy these properties at 9 a.m., take title, and at 12 o'clock, you're walking out with a $40,000-$50,000 check, and that was kind of a normal thing. So I kind of did that, 2008 onwards, 5 or 6 deals a year, with my corporate job. So I was making good income in my job, and then I had this really robust real estate investing business that I was treating as like a full-time business. I mean, I was probably pouring more into that than my own job.
Right.
And 2012 comes along, and I'm at a conference with Dan Merrill, and he's speaking from stage, and he says that, if you're a mom and pop shop and you're doing about 9 or 10 deals a year, and I just paused that statement in my mind, and I said, 9 or 10 deals a year makes me a mom and pop shop. I'm doing 5 or 6.
Right.
So I'm not even a mom and pop shop. I'm
Right.
sub mom and pop right now. And I'm below that threshold. So
Yeah.
I really need to pick it up.
Sure.
And so that was kind of, that moment in time where I decided to take this business to the next level. And so in August of 2012, I started raising private money. And that's what really opened up all the doors, and gave me the ability and the liquidity to go after deals one after another, put offers in, and then have conviction that I had the financial backing to perform at the closing table and actually buy those properties. And so we kind of shifted from doing a short sale flip where we would buy these properties as is and then flip them as is, or
Right.
a couple of lender required repairs, if we were selling it to a retail end buyer.
Sure.
And so we started saying, hey, well, now the banks are making us hold these properties because there's deed restrictions and whatnot. So why not renovate the kitchen and the bathrooms? And instead of making 40 grand, let's make 100 grand, right? And so that kind of became the thing. And so that's how I kind of got into the rehabbing game.
Gotcha. Right. So it was the transition period of when the banks were putting all these difficult restrictions as far as you have to hold this 30, 60, 90, maybe 120 days. And so you had to change your strategy from doing these same day flips to, hey, we might as well just go ahead and rehab them ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the market basically dictated that. They almost forced us to go into rehabbing.
Right, right. Okay. So, and do you feel that that was, the fact when you said I'm starting to raise private money, was it that when the banks are putting these restrictions on, that you decided, okay, I'm gonna have to change my strategy, or you had it in your strategy, start raising private money, and once the money started coming, you said, okay, we have
Well,
to do something with this money. Let's go ahead and
well,
gear
that was the
towards.
problem all along. The problem was I was doing five or six, right? So I had a finite amount of capital, and I knew that. And I knew the only way to grow, well, first of all, I could be happy and content with those five or six because, the spreads on them were pretty good. And
Right.
you live, you're comfortable. You're not a multi-gazillionaire, but you're comfortable. And so I had to make the decision, if I'm going to really scale this business, I'm going to have to bring in private capital. And that's kind of what got me thinking along that thought process.
Right. Now, can you just dive in? Just I don't want to gear too much off, but a big topic is obviously raising private money, and it sounds like you did that early on. Could you just maybe go briefly into maybe that path as far as what obviously we know why you started raising private money, but maybe some of the steps that were involved as far.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So obviously you can't, go out and really raise money from by advertising, right? So there's SEC guidelines and things like that, and I was well aware of that. What I did was I went to my family and friends, and I actually had a deal that I had put under contract, and I brought a lot of them out to a dinner presentation,
Hmm.
and basically showed them my track record. All the properties that we had made money on, and also let them know that this is the first time that we're coming out and raising money, and now we want to offer up an opportunity for others to make money on that on the investment. And so a lot of people already knew what I was in, people that I'm familiar with, and so when they saw the deal, they saw the numbers, it made perfect sense for them.
Right, right. And that's actually a very key point. I've heard other people who've raised private money as well say the same. When they start with their family and friends, that says something. Because when you start targeting other investors that you don't have any relationships with,
Yeah.
when they see that your family members have invested with you and trusted with you and friends have, that does say something.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and particularly if you have your own skin in the game, which I did quite a bit early in the game,
sure.
then it gives them that level of comfort to want to invest as well.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. So and there's nothing worse, you hear that people want no money in, which is great if you can accomplish it, but it's a red flag according to the hard money lenders. They'll try to say, they want to do all these hard, these no money deals. Why aren't they putting any money in their own if it's such a great deal? So that's one of
right.
the biggest issues that they come about. So Shumat, tell obviously for our beginner listeners, they want to, they're interested in, where do we find these deals? That's without any leads. Obviously, you're not rehabbing properties. Where do you find your best source of prospects? There's a combination of things. I mean, obviously, being a wholesaler and have sold you a property, I know wholesaling is one. Do you find that's a big part of where most of your leads come from, or is it, a combination of marketing or just referrals?
Yeah, if I had to kind of put a hierarchy on it,
Right.
I think we do get a lot of our deals from wholesalers. Early on, we did a lot of marketing, and so we used to specifically target list pendants and other lists, probate lists, 30, 60, 90 lists, and get deals that way. And a
Sure.
lot of our short sales would turn into rehabs.
Right.
And that continues to be the case today. A lot of times we'll do those short sales and we'll just wholesale them out to another rehabber. So
Right.
we do have a entire division that does wholesaling, and that's separate. But when we make the decision to, and when I say we, we have a team of folks that we sit down, we look at the numbers, we analyze it, and say, does this make sense to actually rehab it? Um, I would say wholesalers. We do bandit signs. I still believe in bandit signs. I think they're a great source for leads. We do a lot of direct mail, and that direct mail is tried and true. You can't never go away from that. And then we do have a lot of connections with real estate agents where we'll get pocket listings.
Right.
And because of the fact that we've been able to develop a track record and then also perform,
Right.
which obviously REO agents and others like. I'll give you an example. There's one gentleman who's tied in with the divorce court, and so when he gets deals, he just brings them right to us.
Right.
And he was actually brought to me by another wholesaler. And when he saw that we were the ones that were bringing the cash to the table, from there on forward, he would just call me up and say, "Hey, I've got another one for you. I've got another one."
Right.
He probably gives us 3 to 5 deals a year. So he's a good source of leads as well.
Absolutely. I mean, referrals are very, very important, especially those relationships. I mean, that could be your lifeline of your business. I mean, some people can have actually given up direct mail and all forms of marketing just from their referrals.
This
So,
entire business, Ryan, is all relationships.
absolutely.
Whether it's working with your seller, your buyer, if it's your investors, if it's other wholesalers, right? One of the things that we do with our wholesalers is when we're liquid, we'll send out an email and say, look, we're very liquid right now. We're looking to tie up some money, and we'd appreciate it that if you gave us first dibs on your
Sure.
properties. And a lot of times people reach out to us and say, look, I'm not even going to send out the email blast. Go take a look at it. If you like it, let's just close and be done with it. And
Right.
we know that, we're good for our word. And, if it meets our criteria, we'll absolutely move on it.
Excellent. So we glazed over it a little bit, but when you get your first prospect, take us through a little bit of the evaluation phase and how you evaluate if it meets your criteria or not.
Do you mean with a seller, like the seller meeting?
With the prospect. So a deal, whether it's from a wholesaler, seller, whatever it may be, they have a property they want to sell from
Yeah,
start to
so
finish.
let's just say that a deal pops up in my inbox, right? And I'll get an initial look at the numbers. I'll take a look at which wholesaler is sending it. If it's somebody with a track record, great. If it's somebody that has known to be sending deals where the numbers are completely skewed to,
Right.
make a non-deal into a deal, what
Okay.
I'm talking about.
Yeah, sure.
In your mind, they're kind of blacklisted, but I think
Right.
some of those people, they go through their own evolution, they get better with time, and so you never want to pass on a deal. What I immediately do is then I send it to my assistant, and Amina, what she'll do is she'll run after repair value comps on them, right? And if the comps make sense, we follow formula, the maximum allowable offer formula, 70% of the ARV minus the repairs. So really the two variables that I'm looking to solve are what can I sell it for when I'm all said and done with it, and how many repairs.
Right.
So the ARV, we're going to be able to derive that from the comparable sales, more or less, and also like the finishes, right? So we'll look deep into the MLS pictures and what did other rehabbers do and whatnot.
Right.
And as far as repairs, we have to go out and actually visit the property. So either I'll do that myself or my project manager will do that. And we've got our repair sheet, and we'll go there and we'll assess how much the repairs are. And sometimes we'll ask the contractor to meet us there and give us the number right off the bat. And if those numbers make sense, I'll typically look, for something that's like 200 or 300K all in, we'll pretty much look for about a minimum 80K profit, right?
Hmm.
80K gross profit, a little more than 30%
Right.
gross margin. The reason for that is to protect my investors. Number one, because I have a equity financing um, structure set up, so we give away part of the equity of the
Right.
deal as opposed to borrow money.
Sure.
We don't do debt, we do equity. So they get 25 to 30% of the net profits. Our company retains 70 to 75%. So what happens is, number one, the profit has to be large enough so that it's meaningful enough for the investors because they're going to get a percentage of the profit. And secondly, it's really a safety measure that, God forbid, we had an overage in construction, which happens quite a bit, or we overestimated and we're way too optimistic on the resale value, or worse, a combination of both of those things.
Right.
So usually that 80K gross profit margin, that cushion is enough to absorb that. And so for 7 years of doing this, I've never lost money on any single deal.
Excellent. Now, let me ask you this. Any reason why you offer the equity partnership versus borrowed money? And for those that don't know what I mean by borrowed money, it means you're going to borrow the
Yeah,
money and agree at a certain percentage to pay back, just as if they were a bank making a loan. Do you feel that that may?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. No, it's not so much, a preference. It's really because of religious restrictions on dealing with interest. So,
Okay,
uh,
interesting.
I personally cannot deal with interest in terms of either taking or paying interest.
Right.
So, and for that reason, we give up equity.
Okay, very
Yep.
interesting.
Yep.
And let me ask you, if religious reasons were not involved, would you have chosen the other route, or do you feel that by bringing the equity?
Yeah, if monetarily, if it makes sense,
Right.
then yeah, I would.
Right.
But
Okay.
if it made sense. But obviously there are constraints, so I have to go by that.
Sure. And I mean, I'm sure your investors appreciate that, considering, I mean, you mentioned you raised 3.2 million, which is it's pretty impressive. So, I'm
Well,
sure.
I mean, yeah. So total right now we've got about 13.5 million.
Right.
We recently did a cash call where the folks that responded on that cash call, another 3.2 million came in. What happens is we've got about a database of 7,000 people that we built up over time
Right.
through webinars that we've done, through attending community fundraisers and various events and conferences. And some people are dormant, right? So they kind of see how you're going to progress in your business,
Sure.
and others want to invest right away.
Right.
And you have to develop a relationship with them and so on, according to SEC guidelines. So, through that, we've seen that initially, folks that started off with like 25, 30K, today do over 100,000 with us,
Sure.
So, when somebody invests 25,000 with you, hopefully it's not the last 25,000 that they have in their bank account and that's it.
Right.
Particularly when they give it to you without blinking, right? We have people that give us 300K
Hmm.
without blinking. And you know that 300,000 is probably a drop in the ocean and there's a lot more money behind that,
Sure.
and they're just testing the waters right.
Exactly.
So what I have to do is make sure that they are in the right deal. It's a good, conservative, safe deal, and that we delight the heck out of them by the time everything is said and done, and that their
Absolutely.
returns are awesome, so that that 300K grows to 500, maybe more.
Right. Just want to touch on one thing really quick. Before you mentioned that your buying formula is 70 cents on the dollar minus repairs. Now, is that across the board? I mean, it sounds maybe that you're more focused on a smaller area versus, I mean, for example, I wholesale all over New Jersey. My formula is typically 65 cents on the dollar, but that's not applicable to places like Camden and rougher areas of Newark. That will change. And then that's also the same applies where you're getting to nicer areas in Bergen County, Morris County, where you can probably go up to 75 cents on the dollar.
Yep.
So it sounds, if that's across the board, that sounds like you're
Yeah,
more focusing.
it's 65 to 75, and you hit the nail on the head. It's not a hard and fast rule. It's a guideline. It's a roadmap to get us, in the ballpark. And at the end of the day, the comps will speak for themselves if the numbers make sense. And then additionally, we have that criteria of, the margin. If it's 80K or 100K or more, then we'll pull the trigger on the deal.
Right.
Otherwise, we'll probably pass. I mean, I typically pass on 40, 50, $60,000 deals all the time.
Right. Send them
So
my way.
no problem. So yeah. So we'll probably go through about 20 to 25 properties before we say yes to one of them.
Well, that's good, and that's
Yeah,
I'm sure again that your investors appreciate that, meaning that just because we have the money available doesn't mean we're just going to buy anything.
exactly.
Excellent.
Exactly. That's it.
So you obviously have quite the team behind you. Can you tell me a little bit about your team? And I know you have different divisions, but so we'll focus on your rehab team and I guess whoever's part of the processing, et cetera. Go
Yeah,
into each
yeah.
member and their role and responsibility.
Yeah, so we run a pretty lean operation, and that's by design. I didn't want to have too many layers and too much hierarchy within the organization because then you kind of get slow. So this is to keep us nimble and keep us fast. So Amina is basically my right hand. She's the director of operations, and the way that I've got it designed and their incentive plan is to have them run a division of their own. So Amina handles all of the rentals. She's also an agent. So when we have to list a property within a 30-mile radius, we actually do it under her license.
Right.
so a lot of that commission actually gets kicked back right to the bottom line.
Exactly.
It stays in the pot, and then she'll kind of handle working with buyers agents and the whole escrow process and so on. So she'll do a lot of the admin work as well. On the rehab side, I have a project manager, Aman Sharifi, who basically babysits the general contractors, right? The thing with general contractors is, we have a predisposition with our contractors where they are guilty until proven innocent, and
Okay, I like that.
that kind of came about because of nightmares that I've had with contractors myself.
We're going through them. Ours is currently in jail.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. So that's that's the thing with contractors. One,
Yes.
either they are liars or unethical, or just unhonest and dishonest, or two, they're just incompetent.
Hmm.
And then the most dangerous one is when you have a combination of both of them,
Right.
that they're liars and they're incompetent.
Right.
There's quite a bit of those. And so, one of the things we've noticed is that, a lot of times you get what you paid for, and you're better off paying a few thousand more and sleep comfortably at night
It's
than
true.
going for that cheaper labor and thinking you're going to squeeze everything out of it. And sometimes that doesn't work
That's
because you're
probably
you're pulling your hair out at night.
That's probably one of the biggest mistakes. I could say that we have chosen some of the cheaper contractors, and it was almost like a snowball effect where it just, if we paid a little extra, had the right people in there, we would have had these things sold a long time ago.
And through that process, we've actually developed our own team. So we have a guy, Rich, that's on board. So he's not an employee of the company, but more or less he's on payroll. So Rich has four other guys, and when we're self GCing a project, we basically bring him in and his guys, and basically it's five guys all over the house, crawling all over it and doing different aspects of the house. And we're able to keep our labor down significantly
Right.
because those guys get paid about $15 an hour, and they have set timings from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. with a half-hour lunch. So we know that
Right.
we're paying for 9.5 hours per day times $15, right? So
Right.
about and four guys. So we know exactly what our labor rate is. The only other thing you have to figure out is materials, and that's all on HomeDepot.com,
Right.
right? So it's right there. So those are your two aspects of construction. If you can get very good with knowing what your materials cost is, you're able to take the power away from your contractors. I'll give you an example. We've had contractors that quoted us astronomical numbers, right? And when you ask them, well, the skylight is going to cost X amount, and the installation kit is going to be this much. Why are you charging me $2,000?
Exactly.
That means that you're making and it'll take you about 4 hours to put it in. It's going to take you about, you're charging about $200 an hour. You're making as much money as a surgeon. Why
Hmm.
is that? Right? And
Right.
and then they start to backtrack at that point because they're like, wow, okay, so this guy
Knows
kind of
his stuff.
is
Yeah.
talking about, and that's when you're able to take the power away from contractors. When materials cost, that really helps. So,
Absolutely.
I get probably one of the joys of my day, is kind of sad, is walking the aisles of Home Depot.
Okay.
If we're out grocery shopping, I'll inevitably stop off at Home Depot with my kids, just because I look
Excellent.
at, what do lighting fixtures cost? What
Yeah,
does how much is 2x4s going for right now, and things like that. So
I agree.
that definitely helps.
I agree 100%. I have a rental that needs a rehab, and I'm one of the people who say work on your business, not in your business, but I'm actually involved with it, and for the sole purpose of just learning. I want to know what this costs, so that when I'm with my associate Chris doing a rehab, exactly like you mentioned, we're not going to get taken advantage. We know that a double hung window costs $130, and on average it's $50 to $60 to put it in. So if a guy comes and he says, I want 450, I say, hold on, something isn't right here. So by
Exactly.
having that knowledge, and that's, to me, this one rehab that I'm involved with, probably a little too much. I think it's really part of building that knowledge, and for that, those future projects, and for that purpose of being able to, as you say, take the power away. So when they know that you're knowledgeable, they're not going to take advantage of you.
And to your point, working in your business and on your business, for anybody that's looking to scale and grow a larger business, working on the business is absolutely critical. So, as I mentioned that, if I'm walking the aisles of Home Depot or whatever it is, I'll take pictures of, the lighting fixtures that we want, the landscaping. So we'll develop mind maps, for example, and for example, the landscaping mind map that we have. Every single one of our properties, the landscaping looks exactly the same, right?
Sure.
It's red mulch up by the front of the house on the right and left of the stairs, and then it's red mulch going down the driveway, and then there are certain plants and lights, landscaping lights that go up and down the driveway. And so we'll have a before and after picture, and then the actual plants, I've got pictures of the plants with the price tag, right?
Right.
So when he walks in, he knows that he's got to buy a juniper and
There you go.
this amount goes in and so on. So when I'm there at Home Depot, it's with a purpose. It's never to come back again in that aisle.
Right.
And so when he sees lighting fixtures, which chandelier are we going to use in our dining room, for example? It's the same $80 chandelier that we use in pretty much all of our rehabs that are under $400,000, right? And so we've got a picture of it, how much it costs. It's in our directory. And so, you work in your business and then you switch to working on your business so that you don't have to work in your
There
business
you
at all.
go. Absolutely. So did we cover all, I know we kind of geared off a little bit. Did we cover all the members of your team?
Yeah, those are it. Aman and Amina, and then we'll have we have interns that kind of cycle through
Okay.
and take on different projects. So Ali helps me with Flip Nation, which is our real estate coaching company,
Right.
and developing a lot of the the lead pages and squeeze pages and things like that on the back end, a lot of the technology stuff. And that's really it. That's really it. And
Right.
we are actually looking to add another project manager.
Okay.
Everything else is outsourced to vendors. So we have three general contractor teams that we work with, and we know which project more or less is going to be right for which contractor, and we assign it that way. And then they have their own tile setters, plumbers, electricians, and so on.
Right. So why don't we dive into a little bit about that? I mean, one of the biggest things that we've been discussing is getting the right contractors, and you obviously have done that. How do you go about finding those right contractors and screening out the ones that are obviously going to waste your time or cost you money? Um,
Yeah, so we have a questionnaire, and we want to make sure that the contractor abides by our way and our system of doing things. So, for example, Scotch Plains, we just purchased the property on Tuesday, and yesterday I was sitting down with this contractor, and I happen to be friends with him on Facebook, and I see him doing a lot of ad levels, and so I approached him about it and said, let's get to work on this, and some basic questions: how long have you been doing this? Are you licensed? Do you have insurance? Do you have workman's compensation? We check out all of those things, and then I have some documents that they have to sign before we get started. So we have a hold harmless and indemnification agreement for their insurance that they sign, a contractor agreement, which is pretty ironclad in terms of its verbiage, which I'd be happy to send to you and to the listeners.
I
Uh,
appreciate that.
a W-9 form so that we can 1099 them at the end. We have them we do a scope of work in conjunction with them. And that scope of work goes at the property, it gets taped up and it never gets removed so that everybody has the play of what needs to take place at that property. And things get checked off and crossed off as we go down that so that they're on the same page and we're on the same page. And we get references from them and we check some of their previous job sites. So
Right.
one is look at the quality of work, the quality of finishes. Do they have a pride in their workmanship? And then what do their references say, right? And not just references like their mother or their grandmother, but it has to be references from those job sites. And what did those people think of them? Did they
Right.
finish on time? Were they honest in their dealings? Um, did they cut corners? If they saw something that may not necessarily have been on the scope of work, did they go above and beyond and address those things without nickel and diming me for every single thing, right?
Right.
Have that pride in their workmanship is really what it comes down to. And so, it's not the easiest thing. You're sifting through a lot of garbage to find a couple of diamonds.
Right.
And I think we're just about at that point where we've got the ones that we want, and then we've got our own crew that we when we sell GCR projects.
Right. I mean, I could say when we're starting a new rehab project, what we do is we'll go ahead and it's typically because we're scattered with some of our rehabs. It's not focused in one centralized area.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead, we'll meet a bunch of contractors, we'll spend a whole day out there, and then you get your range. You have your low end, your high end, and then somewhere in the middle. Um, and I could say that, as we talked about earlier, one of the problems of going towards the lower end is it's just like anything, you get what you pay for. And I could say that there's been a few situations which we probably were better off paying the extra few $1,000s to have these things sold, to not be dealing with all the headaches. Um,
Yeah, and one of the common tricks is, you'll get a low bid, and that contractor is giving you that low bid just to get the job. And then once he gets the job, he's going to change order you to
Bingo.
death, right? And you'll end up paying exactly what you would have paid with the other guy who was doing an impeccable job from the get-go, and he was going to be honest with his dealings and all of that. But now you've got this scumbag.
Exactly. You're right. You're right. And then for those that don't know what the change order is, once you've signed the contract and the contractor's doing their work, they'll come to you and say, "Oh, this just popped up. So we didn't, you didn't tell us about this, or we didn't know about this, and so this is an added-on cost." And you say, "Okay, there's a couple thousand. Okay, it's still in our budget." And then a couple days go by. Oh, wait, we have another change order because this has to be done and this has to be done.
Yeah.
Before you know it, you're up paying the same amount that some of the other mid-range contractors were getting anyway.
It's that phone call that you get when they say something new came up. That's change order.
How much is this going to cost me?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And they
Excellent.
start explaining it to you, like, this has to be done, then I got to remove this, then I got to put some of this in, and they give you this really colorful story. And I'm sure a lot of rehabbers can attest to this. And all that is to justify the number that he's about to say at the end of all that he's about to say. That's all he's doing is trying to justify some ridiculous number that is about to come out of his mouth. And what I typically tell them is, look, I don't need an explanation of what you got to do. Just tell me how much is it going to cost.
Right.
How much time is it going to take? Those are the only two variables I care about.
Yeah.
Time and money. Right.
Sure.
And just get to the bottom line. And they'll paint this whole story of why it costs that much. And I'll say, okay, really. And then we'll do a little bit of investigation to see if that's what the, whatever issue it is, if that's what it really costs, and just to kind of see if those numbers are justified.
Right. Now let me ask you this, because this is something that we have encountered to be a very, I guess you could say, a snowballing issue. How do you work out your payment plans? I know typically we have it structured up in like thirds, and some contractors want some money up front. And we really shot ourselves in the foot because at one of our rehabs, we paid money up front, and then we were always chasing them for work to be done. Basically, we paid them money for work that was never completed, and it was just a domino effect of a nightmare. And I understand that, if you've done 10, 12 rehabs with these persons, then okay, it's a different story. But when you're first starting out the relationship, us personally, and I've talked to Chris, who we encountered this issue with, I say, Chris, under no circumstances are we paying for any work that is not completed. Material we may consider, but absolutely no work. And I think that's very important. I know you obviously probably have your structure and what is set up. I mean, what's your payment setup? Is it similar? And what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first premise and the philosophy has to be that the work has to be ahead of the payments, right? Mm-hmm. If you go to work in a regular 9-to-5 job, you put the work in first, your paycheck comes next, right? It comes second. This is no different. So any credible contractor, any reputable contractor should have a pro account, a contractor account with Home Depot or Lowe's, right? And so if they go get the materials, put it on your account, put it on your charge account, and then we'll pay you whatever the cost of those materials are. In the beginning, what are you worried about? You're going to do demo. You're going to pull permits if you need permits. You're going to get dumpsters, things like that. Those don't cost a whole lot. So we'll pay for those things.
Right.
As far as labor goes, we'll typically break it up into 5 or 6 payments a lot of times. The most critical one is the final payment.
Yes, it is.
So we'll withhold anywhere from 10 to 20%, because that's pretty much the profit that the general contractor is making after
Hmm.
paid out everybody. And so that's the one that we want to make it, we want to make that one hurt a little bit.
Absolutely.
Till it's turnkey and the certificate of occupancy has been delivered, we're not cutting that final check.
Right.
And it's subject to our satisfaction. So we have to do a walkthrough and draw up a final punch list. So even though he's got stuff crossed off on the scope of work, it's not done until we say it's actually done. So we'll go
Right.
in, and inevitably there's always things that need to be touched up and so on, and we'll point those things out. And then once that gets done, and then the certificate of occupancy comes in, then and only then do we cut the final check, and then we get a final and unconditional waiver of lien signed. So as I hand him the check, he hands me the signed unconditional waiver of lien. That ensures that he's not going to put any liens on the property.
Exactly. And you know what? Those final touches are extremely important. And for some reason, they always seem to take the longest. So having that money, in essence, which most of the profit holding that back, ensures that you're going to get the job completed, because there's nothing worse than having the contractor all paid out and those final touches, although they seem minute, they are very time consuming.
I don't care how good the contractor is. Once they are paid,
They're gone.
they're done.
That's it.
They're done. It's now they have to go back and work at this job for what?
Nothing.
Paid for this. So they think that they're now doing voluntary work, even though it was part of the original contract.
You're 100% correct.
So that last payment has to hurt, and that's their profit essentially. That's what they're making on the project. And if you can withhold 10 to 20%, and that's all agreed upon before the project actually starts, before any hammer gets picked up.
Yes.
The payment schedule is one of the things that we sign off on and they sign off on, and each payment is aligned with milestones. So demo has to be done, whatever, and then I pay you, right? And then bathrooms and kitchen has to be done, and then I pay you. And so those milestones are written in. We go in and we check on them, and then we cut the check.
Right. Excellent. So okay, I mean that's great information about the contractors, and so let me ask you this: tell me a little bit about the flow. You've just closed on a property; it's a rehab candidate.
Yeah.
What's the flow as far as you hand it off to so and so? At what point does so and so contractor get it? Give me an idea of the entire process.
Absolutely. So I'm actually going through a lot of that right now because, as I mentioned earlier, we had done a cash call for one property, and we had over 3 million came in, and so we used that to buy 7 more properties in about 10 days, right? And so I'm going through a lot of closing and then handing it off to my project manager and to the general contractor. So we'll have a meeting with myself, the project manager Aman, and the GC. And all the paperwork will get signed. We'll put a lockbox on the property. It's the same lockbox combination across the board, just to keep everything uniform and simple. And then the scope of work is all done, and then the contractors get to work. So if we need to hire an architect, they hire the architect. They're going to take care of the permits and things like that. There's a saying that the best investors do only 2 things: they write checks and they get checks. and that's kind of the way I want to run
Yeah.
my business.
Sure.
Literally, you come to my house, we're going to sign all this paperwork. I'm going to give you the initial check to get the ball rolling, and then we're going to go based off of our payment schedule, right?
Sure.
And that's the way you want to kind of set up your business. So that's how it goes. And then from there, the rehab begins. Aman is there on site. I'll probably make 1 visit a week just to kind of check it out and be in the field and see what's going on. And then also offer my own input. And a lot of, the way I stay updated is through video and through pictures. So we use WhatsApp. And so we'll ask them to send pictures almost on a daily basis of the progress of the project. That's for 2 reasons. One, for my own comfort that things are happening, but and somebody was actually at the property. The worst is 75-degree day, and you go to the house and nobody's working. You're like, what the heck is going on here?
Mm-hmm.
I hate that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so pictures, and that ensures that they were there on site, and then obviously Aman is checking on them as well, and then on a biweekly basis, we use those pictures as an update to our investors. So we'll send those pictures out, and let them know how the project is progressing. Because we have investors all over the country. Some are sitting in California, some are sitting in Canada,
Right.
all over. So we want to keep them attuned to how their money's working.
Yeah, and then they're very appreciative of that. Some of
Really.
them don't want to be bothered with it, but especially when you're cultivating a new relationship,
Yeah.
that's extremely important. And I think they really appreciate it when they see, okay, my money's actually being put to use, and Shomail's not drinking whatever on private islands and whatnot. Not that you
Couldn't
drink. I know you don't
agree
drink.
anymore. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you'll go through the whole process. The rehab is completed.
Rehab
Now,
is completed. We get to the final punch list stage, right? So
okay.
the contractor says, "I'm done," and we say, "No, you're not." Oh, my daughter wants to say hi. Jenna,
Hello.
say hi.
Real estate moguls in the making.
There's
I
a
just-
big spider upstairs.
okay, I'll come fight the spider in a second.
Uh-oh.
That is really big.
Okay, I'll be there.
Yeah,
I'll be there in a couple minutes. Okay. Okay, no problem.
Arachnophobia in the attic.
All right. So, okay, I'll come there in a couple minutes. Ryan, give me just 1 second to close the door.
No problem.
By the way, my son is like awesome with his Lego blocks, and my daughter talks quite a bit. So she's gonna be our lawyer, and
Oh, okay.
it's gonna be. I'm trying to, groom them in that way,
Absolutely.
and hopefully take over the company, be the second generation.
There you
But
go.
but yeah, so we'll get to the final punch list. The contractor says, "I'm done," and we'll say, "No, you're not. We're coming to the property and seeing what's really done and what needs to be done," and then we'll come up with that final punch list. And then when he goes through all of that, we ask them to close out the permits, and then the property gets professionally cleaned. And then we have a staging company that comes in, and typically we'll stage the dining room, the family room, and a lot of times we'll do a finished basement. It's something that we've been doing with a lot of our finished products, just to add extra living space or entertainment space. So we'll stage that.
And you stage every property.
We stage every single property.
Okay.
I just found that if you can paint that picture for the buyer a little bit better and they see it as a home, not just as a house,
Right.
you actually kind of stand out. And then your pictures, the National Association of Realtors says that 96% of people shop for houses online first. So gone are the days when people would just call up their agent,
Mm-hmm.
say, "Hey, do you have 5 houses that I could look at this Sunday with my wife?"
Sure.
Are you going along? Now people look at Zillow, they look at Realtor.com,
And they
see,
tell the agent.
and they tell the agent. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. They're the ones telling the agent. So the pictures have to be on point. And so we get a professional photographer. I don't take these pictures on my Android phone,
Right.
So a professional photographer comes in, good lighting, all of that stuff. They take care of that. Whatever needs to be photoshopped or photo edited, they do that. And then those pictures go up, and then we go on the market. In terms of our liquidation process, we'll mine the MLS for all the agents that have closed any deal in that town or surrounding towns in the last 12 months. And we'll typically do an e-blast with a link to the pictures. And we'll say, hey, this property's, we're a residential redevelopment company, and this property is going on the market. And we wanted you to have a quick sneak peek, and here are the pictures. And then they get to see it. And we'll probably offer up something a little extra, right? So we'll do the 2.5% commission, but we'll probably offer like a Groupon trip to the Poconos, or
Right.
An iPad or something like that, because the broker can't take an iPad and cut that in half, right?
Right.
They'll take their commission check and cut it in half. So we'll offer something a little extra to make our listings
Right.
stand out.
Now, this is before you've even listed it yourself, right? So in essence, you're doing for sale by owner by lining the MLS and then sending it out.
I want to shop it around a little bit.
Good.
And then if we need to go on the market and get that MLS exposure, we'll do it through typically through Amina. If it's a little bit outside of our range, then we will find the top selling agent in that area and have them listed as a 5% listing,
Right.
and then we'll get referral commission on that.
Okay. Actually, I was told sometimes people go for the second best agent in the office because usually the first is too busy.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, all right.
But I mean, it sounds like you're having good success. So
Yeah, so far so good. Yeah, but
Excellent.
that's interesting. I think We might use that too.
Sounds good. Let me know how it works out.
Okay.
So, I mean, that was excellent information. I mean, that's pretty much from a high level soup to nuts. And so, let me ask you this: for those that are listening and they're looking to get started in rehabbing, I mean, obviously, rehabbing is more risk involved than wholesaling. Wholesaling is your typical, I guess, your most popular entry into real estate investing. But what would you tell those who are looking to get into rehabbing? What's the best way for them to get started?
I would absolutely say educate yourself first. There's a great book by Rick Villani where he talks about his 52-step rehab system, and I believe it's called Find It, Fix It, Profit. So that's a great book to get. And then also, I'm personally a huge fan of education. I think knowledge before action is critically important. So, I've gone out and I've taken a lot of mentorship programs, seeked a lot of coaching and things like that, just so that I can bypass the trial and error process
Right.
and know what I'm doing when I get into it. The worst thing you want to do is have somebody else's money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and not know what you're doing.
Absolutely.
You could lose your shirt in the business,
Right.
and your reputation, and then you're not going to be back in real estate investing anytime soon.
Right.
Because once you taint your name, you're done.
Right.
So you want to make sure that you get educated, and then you then apply that education. Uh, you know, uh, Quick little plug. We do education as well, but obviously there's a
Right.
lot of companies and organizations that offer phenomenal information.
And that's Flip Nation is
Yeah. Flip Nation. It's mostly targeted for the tri-state area, also in particular New Jersey. New Jersey happens to be the leading state in mortgage delinquencies all over the United States. It took the lead from Florida, so sounds pretty shameful, but it means a lot of opportunity for those of us living in New Jersey. And so, I've had the opportunity on an informal basis to teach a lot of people, and then a lot of people would approach me, whether I was speaking at an event or whatever it was. So I kind of decided to structure a full-blown curriculum where we teach marketing, wholesaling, rehabbing, short sales, REOs, how to raise capital, how to go into rental properties, the whole gamut of real estate investing, particularly in the residential side. And so that's, flipnationbootcamp.com.
excellent. So anyone looking to get started, not just rehabbing, but also wholesaling and involved with real estate, you cover it from beginning to end. I mean, someone who has no experience whatsoever, correct?
Absolutely, A to Z.
That's
Yep.
excellent. Great. And now you also have, like, let's say there's some are money investors are listening. How would they contact you if they say, I want to get involved in Shomail's rehab projects, I want to invest money with him? How can
Yeah,
they
so
contact you?
and that's kind of where I'm mostly involved these days with my company is investor relations. So you can call me directly at 732-800-1955. You can also visit our website, strategicrealtyllc.com. But the best way to get in touch with me is just shoot me a text or give me a call, 732-800-1955.
Excellent. Shomail, I really appreciate you being on. A lot of great information. Hope to have you on in the future.
Ryan, thanks so much for the time. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Excellent.
Take care.